It's been a decade since I last sat for a job interview, but here I am at 44, ready to pursue my passion once more. My name is Michael Harris, and I'm a mechanical design engineer. I recently moved to this area, and funnily enough, this company used to be one of my biggest rivals. I have a strong feeling they'll offer me a position once they see what I bring to the table. Hopefully, things will soon fall into place, especially my plan to get rid of my cheating wife. I first met Laura in 1993, and I can still picture her from that time. She was stunning and brimming with confidence, while I was the shy, introverted type. Growing up under the thumb of a domineering mother will do that to a guy. My two mean-spirited sisters, Emily and Kate, didn't help either. They bullied me relentlessly throughout my childhood. Emily, the eldest, was 13 years my senior, and Kate was 10 years older. I was an unplanned child, and they blamed my birth for our parents' breakup. My father walked out on us in 1977 when I was just 5 and never returned. It wasn't until recently that I learned the full truth. "Come on in, Mr. Harris. Nice to meet you," James Thompson, the owner of Hamilton Hydraulics, greeted me warmly. He was the polar opposite of my previous employer. "Thank you for having me, Mr. Thompson," I replied politely, taking a seat in his impressive office. He sat across from me and began speaking. "I'm surprised you're leaving green engineering, Mr. Harris." "Please call me Michael, and I can't wait to get out of there," I said, eager to leave my old job behind. "They're doing great work there, Mr. Harris." "Michael, I'm sorry," he corrected himself, still looking puzzled. "I'm doing a great job, Mr. Thompson." "Please call me James," he interjected. As I mentioned, I've worked tirelessly for the last 10 years. My developments have propelled the company forward, yet I've received little thanks and even less respect lately. He scrutinized me for a moment. I hadn't mentioned my personal issues, and I intended to keep them under wraps for now. "There's no doubt we want you here, Michael. I can offer you the package you requested, which includes a substantial raise. You also mentioned on the phone that you'd like a commission if you help us secure more contracts. Is that correct?" "Yes, that's correct." "I hope it's nothing illegal, Michael. I don't want any part of that," he said firmly. I raised my hand to reassure him of my honorable intentions. "I interact with our customers daily. I know what they pay for our products and the details of the contracts. With my designs and your team, we can offer more favorable terms and become the best in the business. What do you say?" He extended his hand and I shook it, seeing integrity in his eyes. Another part of my plan was falling into place. Now, back to my cheating wife, Laura. We met at Kingston University in South London. She was finishing her creative writing degree, and I was completing my master's in mechanical engineering and design. I was too shy to approach her, but she never lacked male attention. She was 5'5", with brown hair and big brown eyes you could get lost in. She had a stunning body and a magnetic presence that drew people in. Despite all the popular, outgoing guys chasing her, one of her friends started talking to me at a party, and Laura joined us. My modesty and shyness seemed to intrigue her. I gathered the courage to ask her out, and we began dating. After 6 months, I heard rumors of her being with other guys, but I had no proof and was too afraid to confront her. Laura was a spoiled child, pampered by her parents, and she acted like a princess throughout our relationship. If things didn't go her way, she caused a scene, even in public, which always baffled me. My friends couldn't stand her and thought I should leave her, but I was in love like never before. After graduation, we both found jobs and rented an apartment near Southampton in Hampshire, close to her family. I had long since lost touch with mine. We married a year later, and our daughter Isabella was born the following year, followed by Olivia a couple of years after. Laura loved being a mom, and everything seemed great. I was promoted several times, and 10 years ago, I started working for Green Engineering. The pay raises and bonuses helped us save for a better house. However, like many others, 2008 hit us hard. The economic downturn made jobs scarce, and we had to work longer hours without extra pay. It was during this stressful time, with both girls in high school, that I suspected Laura was having an affair with someone from our old university. I was so consumed with work that I didn't notice until it was too late. My best friend, Ryan, thought it was a guy from her class who had moved nearby. When I confronted her, she laughed in my face and called me stupid, but I knew she was lying. Despite the economic hardships, I managed to keep my job and salary, allowing us to buy a nice house. Laura insisted we buy a house that matched our status, whatever that meant. And I relented. We bought a beautiful 5-bedroom detached house in Southampton at a good price, although the mortgage was steep. One smart move I made was opening a savings account in my name only, where I deposited my year-end bonuses. Being the sole breadwinner, I handled all our finances, and Laura never knew about it. In hindsight, this turned out to be a wise decision. I needed protection, unsure if Laura would leave me if her old lover reappeared. Things returned to normal, and my daughters remained my top priority. I supported their studies and spent weekends with them, taking them to dance classes, concerts, and the zoo. Laura was always too busy with her coffee dates and socializing with her equally spoiled and lazy friends. My friends couldn't stand her and thought I should leave her, but I was in love like never before. In recent months, everything started falling into place. Olivia had just left for university, and for the first time in 18 years, Laura and I were alone. Both girls went to our alma mater, and as I finished unpacking Olivia's things in the apartment she would share with her sister, I began to see the truth. She turned to me and asked why I was still with their mother. I was taken aback, as Olivia had always been such a quiet girl, much like me. "Daddy, I heard she's been seeing Daniel Green from your company," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. This was news to me, but I wasn't shocked. Over the years, I could have dug into Laura's activities, but I chose not to, fearing it would tear our family apart and make my daughters resent me, like my sisters resented our father. I put up with her infidelity because the alternative was too painful to consider. I still loved her, but I loved what we had built together even more. This revelation left several deep impressions on me. First, I realized just how much my daughters resented their mother, far more than I had ever imagined. They loved and respected me, but were disappointed that I hadn't taken a stronger stance against Laura. Second, it reminded me of the old feelings I had for the women in my life growing up, highlighting my own weaknesses. Lastly, I realized that at work, people openly talked and laughed about me, especially about Daniel Green, who turned out to be the nephew of Tom, the owner of the company, and the man Laura was involved with. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't take it anymore, especially now that my youngest daughter had discovered Laura's betrayal. My heart was pounding as I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Laura to come home. When she finally arrived, I found myself unable to speak. She looked at me with what I could only describe as apathy and contempt. She didn't say anything as she put her bags away. Finally, I gathered the courage to speak up. "Are you having an affair, Laura?" She turned to face me, blushing slightly but answering without hesitation. "I wouldn't call it an affair, darling." I was floored by her blunt confession and waited for her to explain why having sex with another man didn't count as an affair. "You're a wonderful person, Michael. You're a great provider and my best friend. But there are things you can't give me, and I'm not ashamed to say I want it all," she said without a hint of remorse. "So you're cheating on me?" I asked, feeling utterly defeated by her brazen attitude. "Only my body," she said nonchalantly. "Not my heart or my mind, Michael, which belong to you." My head was spinning, and my stomach churned. The sheer audacity of her words left me speechless. "I've never turned you down for sex, Michael. All I do is explore with a couple of young guys," she admitted, as if it were no big deal. "What?" I shouted, my reaction taking her by surprise since I rarely raised my voice. She walked around the table and sat across from me. "Don't yell at me, Michael," she said, regaining her composure. "You admitted to cheating on me with 2 guys and I'm supposed to stay quiet?" I replied, my voice trembling with anger. "I love you, Michael, but this is how it's going to be. Deal with it, or I'll leave and be with them," she said, delivering both a threat and an ultimatum. I just stared at her as her face softened. For a moment, I thought she saw the hurt in my eyes. "Everyone does it these days, Michael. My girlfriends have had affairs with younger men, and they say it makes for a better marriage," she said, trying to justify her actions. I was stunned. I had a hard time processing everything. Laura was actually trying to justify her cheating by saying all her friends were doing it too, and it would somehow make our marriage better. She didn't care about the marriage or me, only the comfort and security I provided. "So I can have another woman, is that what you're saying, Laura?" I asked. She stared at me for a few seconds and then laughed in my face. I sat in silence as she continued to laugh, trying to pull myself together. "Yes, Michael, come on, be serious. You have trouble talking to women you've known for years. What chance do you have of talking to someone new?" She was blatantly mocking me as she giggled, and I felt humiliated and ashamed. That's the way it's going to be, Michael. So don't ruin a good thing. I'm still your wife. I still love you, and I come home to you every night. Don't ruin your life, don't complain, and don't do something you'll regret later. She left me at the table, my mind reeling from what had just happened. She spoke so openly about her affairs that I realized she didn't care about me at all. I didn't care if her friends were all cheating, but that didn't give her the right to do the same. She had the nerve to threaten me. I was furious. That night I slept in the spare room because I couldn't bear to be near her. Around midnight, Laura woke me up and asked why I wasn't in bed. Was she really that deluded? Come on, Michael, get over it. That's the way the world works now. You're just acting like an old man, she said. I didn't respond. I sensed her presence on the landing, peering into the spare room. Suit yourself, Michael. You'll be back in bed soon, I know it. You don't deny me anything, and you know as well as I do that I'll get my way, she said confidently. In reality, she was right. What had I done in our 22-year relationship that indicated anything other than my unbridled devotion and willingness to go along with whatever she wanted? It was common knowledge that I was on her payroll, and now it was common knowledge among her friends and my co-workers that I was also a cuckold. I didn't sleep a wink, so I decided to go downstairs and watch TV. There was a show about celebrities tracing their family trees, and while much of it went over my head, it got me thinking about my own family. I had no contact with my mother or sisters, but I started to remember my father. I remembered so little about him. Did he have a family? Why had he left? Was it true, as my mother said, that he had abandoned us? Before I left for university, I found out from my brother-in-law that my father had died years ago, but my sisters denied knowing this. That's when I decided to cut them out of my life. The next day, I was up and out of the house before Laura even woke up. Thoughts of what she'd said still swarmed in my head, and I desperately tried to focus on something more positive to get through the day. I remembered the TV show from the night before and decided to make some inquiries about my father. The girls didn't need me as much anymore, and my wife was having sex with God knows who, so maybe finding answers about my father would keep me busy. Good morning, Michael. I turned to see who was talking and faced Daniel Green. The smug look on his face, as if he were ready to burst into laughter, made my blood boil. I just stared at him and said nothing. How's your wife doing? He asked, openly mocking me. I heard a few giggles from the grown men at the coffee machine. I just stared at them as they stood their ground. I walked past them as they continued to laugh at my expense. It felt like the whole world knew my business, and even my boss's secretary, Chloe, seemed to find my situation laughable and open to ridicule. Can I offer you anything, Mr. Harris? Maybe a couple of balls? I stared at her in disbelief. What did you just say? I asked, my voice barely controlled. She shifted awkwardly, stepping closer. I said there were no calls, she repeated, stifling a laugh. I trudged to my office and sank into my chair. The day had gone from bad to worse, and now I was a joke at work and home. Trying to concentrate on my project was impossible. The anger bubbling inside wouldn't let me focus. I decided to start looking for my father. The only information I had was that he was born in Cambridgeshire and left us when he was 38, back in 1977. I began my search on family history websites. After about half an hour, I discovered 14 men named James Harris, born in 1939 in Cambridgeshire. Knowing he might have died before I went to university, I narrowed it down to 3 possibilities. Realizing I didn't have the time to investigate each one, I posted messages on genealogy websites in the relevant towns. As I pondered the events of the past 24 hours, my phone rang. It was Tom, my boss, summoning me to his office. Tom was a wealthy, powerful man in his 60s, notorious for his bullying and cheating ways. He demanded respect but offered none in return. Despite many opportunities to leave, the generous salary had always kept me there. I knew he was having an affair with his secretary, Chloe, behind his third wife's back. It's come to my attention that your wife is playing a trick on you, Michael, he said, his tone sharp. With your nephew, I retorted. Well, yeah, he's got a temper. Runs in the family, Tom said, laughing. But that's what I want to discuss. I don't want this affecting the business. Family comes first for me, Michael, so if this causes problems, you're the one who has to go. Understood? He spoke to me like I was a child in trouble. I bit my lip as Chloe lingered by the door, clearly eavesdropping to spread more gossip. As I left, I wondered why a young woman would lower herself to be with someone like Tom. Walking past her, I heard more giggling. I kept my head down, feeling humiliated. Back in my office, I realized staying here was pointless. I had funded my daughter's education and was now merely supporting Laura's infidelities. I lived simply, enjoying gadgets but not needing a big house. Most of our expenses were Laura's luxuries, her frequent trips to the salon, her car, her phone, and other unnecessary indulgences. Usually work was my sanctuary where I could be creative and successful. I had designed many of the parts manufactured here and knew I could find work elsewhere. They saw me as weak, and in many ways, they were right. I avoided confrontation and was content to go with the flow. As I stared at my computer screen, a family vacation photo greeted me. I clicked my mouse and my email opened. There was a message from Melissa Paulson of the Cambridge Genealogical Committee. Surprised at the quick response, I read her email. Melissa had seen my post and connected me with a woman named Jessica Lee, who claimed to be my father's niece. Jessica had been researching her family tree and discovered my post. Excited, I sent Melissa my number and asked if Jessica could contact me. Leaving work with a lighter heart, I came home to the smell of dinner cooking. I dropped my bag in the hallway and walked into the kitchen to find Laura preparing dinner. We exchanged brief greetings and ate in silence. Laura kept trying to make eye contact, sensing my anger. Usually I would have caved in by now, but tonight I stayed firm. "Can we talk about last night, Michael?" she asked softly. "What's there to discuss? You made everything perfectly clear. I either accept it or I don't, right?" I replied. For a moment she looked remorseful, but it quickly vanished. She took a deep breath and continued. "You're a great husband and have never denied me anything. Please don't start now, Michael," she pleaded, using her usual tactic to get what she wanted. "If I'm so great, why cheat on me? Why make a fool of me?" I asked, genuinely curious. She sighed, brushing me off. She had no real answer, she was just selfish. I was tired of it. No matter how hard I worked to provide for her, all I got was disrespect and ridicule. I drove a 12-year-old Range Rover while she flaunted a new car. "Listen, Michael, I have needs that you can't meet, so either you deal with it or I'll find someone who will," she said bluntly. "You mean Daniel Green? Everyone knows about you two," I shot back. "Yes, Daniel and I are together. He's practically your boss, and will take over the company someday. He gives me what I need now, and if you don't agree, I'll leave you and he'll provide for me," she said coldly. I didn't respond. Instead, I left the room and went to my office. I wanted to hit something but collapsed into my chair, burying my face in my hands. Tears welled up as I screamed into my palms, wishing I could be anywhere but here. Just then, the phone rang. It was Jessica. We spoke for about an hour. By the time I hung up, I felt a glimmer of hope. Jessica was thrilled I was interested in our family history and had much to share. She talked so fast it was hard to keep up. I learned that my mother had kicked my father out and lied to me my whole life. Tragically, he died of alcohol poisoning in 1983 when I was 11. His mother, my grandmother, always blamed my mother for his temper and decline after he left us. Jessica told me he had wanted to reconnect, but was prevented from doing so. We arranged to meet in Cambridge that weekend. I felt excited and knew the break would be good for me. The rest of the week dragged on. Nothing changed at home, but at work, the mocking continued. Daniel and his friends thought it would be hilarious to hang a pair of panties on my office door. I glanced at Chloe, but she didn't say a word. Inside the panties was a note that read, "Please go back to your wife." I was crushed. I sat at my desk that day and cried, wanting to blame everyone but myself. When Saturday finally arrived, I told Laura I was visiting a friend in London. She didn't care what I was doing, likely mocking me behind my back, so her absence made it easier. The drive to Cambridge was stressful. The M25 was a nightmare, and I arrived at Jessica's house an hour late. She didn't seem to mind, greeting me with the warmest hug I'd had in years. I met her husband Mark and their two young children, Ethan and Logan. Once the introductions were over, we dove into conversations about my father and my newfound family. Jessica had a warm, unselfish personality, and she and Mark complemented each other perfectly, often finishing each other's sentences. They both seemed eager to share our family story. During my stay, we were joined by Benjamin and Mia Harris, my cousins, and Jessica's siblings. Benjamin and I got along well, and he shared everything he knew about our father and family. After lunch, we took a little trip, giving me some time to think. When we returned, Benjamin and I talked about work and family life. He could sense things weren't going well for me, and I confided in him and Jessica. They assured me they would support me no matter what, and I felt immensely grateful. I left Cambridge with a new perspective. I had been lied to and mistreated for so long that discovering I had a different, more honest, and kind family gave me hope. I needed to sort my life out, not just for myself, but for my girls, my friends, and my new family. By the time I got home, it was 8 p.m., and Laura was about to go out. "Where are you going, Laura?" I asked. "Out with friends," she replied. "You mean Daniel or Chris?" I snapped back. She looked taken aback that I knew the name of her other lover. I gave her a knowing look. "Please don't do this again, Michael," she pleaded, showing little concern for my feelings. "Please, Laura, I'm asking you to stop this and be my wife," I said. "Stop being silly, Michael. I'm your wife and always will be. Don't deny me my pleasures, and I'll make your life easier. I'll be back by midnight," she said dismissively, completely ignoring my wishes and continuing to threaten me. She approached with her arms wide open, and I turned my back on her. She said nothing to my blatant insult, just picked up her Prada purse and headed for the door. "Laura, as your husband, I'm asking you not to do this." My voice became harsher. She stopped and looked at me as if questioning who I was to talk to her like that. Her expression only lasted a second before she burst out laughing. "What are you going to do, Michael? Leave me? You'll never have the courage. We both know you'll always be by my side." I was mortified. Her words echoed in my head, confirming that she saw me as weak and powerless. I knew she was spoiled, a product of her parents' indulgence, and I treated her like a queen while I was the workhorse. I knew she was selfish, but I always believed she loved me. I realized I had been a fool for too long, and it had to end. I wasted no time and got down to business. I started planning my escape while she was off with Daniel or Chris, maybe both. The thought drove me mad, but it helped me focus. I found an old box and pulled out a particular photo. It was the only picture of my mom and sisters. I cut Laura's face out of another photo and pasted it next to them, symbolically severing my emotional ties. I put the altered photo on my desk next to my monitor. At about 12:45 a.m., I was finishing up work, having decided what I would do in the near future. I had an idea of when I would leave, but it could be weeks away. Laura didn't expect me to leave, which gave me time. I knew I'd need help, but I was determined to go all the way. As I heard someone stumble out the door, I got up and looked out the window, watching Daniel Green's car pull away. Laura was coming up the stairs, so I quickly erased my story from the computer, resolving to use incognito mode in the future. I waited for her to enter our bedroom and then went downstairs to make some coffee. I sat on the couch, thinking about my future away from this place. Without my daughters, it wouldn't be so bad. I decided to try and move closer to them. Monday morning, I went to work with a new clarity. I wouldn't lift another finger for Tom Green. I walked to my office, ignoring the taunts and comments directed at me. I was determined to destroy those who mocked me, fueled by my anger. I managed to get a bank appointment for 1 p.m. and spent the morning preparing, analyzing my finances. The odds were slim, but if everything went well and the right people helped me, I could come out of this unscathed. The meeting went as planned. I closed my savings account and removed my name from our joint account. I had an ISA with a few thousand in it, so I closed it for cash and put it in my wallet. On the way back to the office, I stopped at PC World and bought 2 digital voice recorders, a 500 GB USB 3.0 hard drive, and a new hard drive for my PC. Back in the office, I sat down at my desk and began trying to access the company's personal client files. I had seen a glimpse of them in Tom's office, so I knew they existed. It didn't take me more than an hour to crack his password. Ironically, his username was his wife's name, and the password was his name and 6-digit birth date, Jack 24656. I had everything I needed. I plugged the USB drive into my computer and loaded all the files onto it. 10 minutes later, I did the same with all my new plans and drawings for the energy-efficient hydraulic pump system I was working on. We were creating pumps for air conditioners, heavy equipment, and even the dairy sector. I erased all my computer history, including my plans and designs, then shut it down, removed the hard drive, and replaced it with the new one. I put everything in my bag and reinstalled Windows. I spent the rest of the day researching our competitors on my phone and logged onto Monster to look for engineering jobs in the South London area. Then I left for the day. That evening, after another silent dinner, I went to my office to continue planning my escape. I found out that a significant competitor of ours, who was experiencing financial troubles, was looking for a mechanical engineer to help with shop design and operations. Although it wasn't my dream job, it was pretty close. They were offering a salary that was £10K less than what I currently earned, so I sent them an email with my CV that night. I decided to sleep in our marital bed that night, just to avoid disturbing Laura, but I made sure to be asleep when she came in. When she started rubbing against me, I felt sick to my stomach, but as nauseating as it was almost satisfying to react that way. Her disgust towards me would ultimately be beneficial in the long run. The next day, I got a call from a very surprised James Thompson of Hamilton Hydraulics. We had a brief conversation, and he was shocked that I would consider leaving green engineering for a smaller company. He offered me the job almost immediately, but I insisted on having an interview first. He agreed, and everything started moving quickly. With plenty of free time, I began searching for apartments in the area. I didn't need a house, and though options were limited, I found a lovely apartment for rent. It was £1,200 a month, had 2 bedrooms, and was perfect for me. The apartment was just 15 minutes from the girls and only 5 minutes from work. I scheduled a viewing for the day after my interview with James Thompson. I spoke to Tom and told him I needed to meet my daughters in Kingston the next day to sign some papers. He just brushed me off and said to go ahead. That night, I called my best friend Ryan Carter. We had known each other since 6th grade, and both went to Kingston, though he studied finance and math and was now a big banking analyst in the city. He lived with his wife and kids in a nice house in Twickenham. Most importantly, both he and his wife hated Laura, so we rarely spoke as couples. Laura was jealous of Lily because she was an ambitious web developer married to a wealthy banker. Despite everything I gave Laura, it was never enough for her. I arranged to meet Ryan the night after my interview and apartment viewing. He knew I had something on my mind, but I told him I'd explain everything when we met. Throughout the day, I thought about many things. Today was crucial not only for my immediate plans, but also for my future. At that point, I had no idea how the girls would react to the recent revelations. I had planned to retire at 55, thinking about investing in a villa in Italy or somewhere else. My mortgage would be paid off by the time I was 50, and the extra 5 years of work would allow us to save a nice fund without relying solely on retirement savings. My new job was about 20 minutes from the girls' apartment. The meeting went quickly, and the apartment was perfect. I had plenty of time before meeting Ryan, so I grabbed lunch for the girls and me and headed to their apartment. They lived together, and I was paying half their rent. As I approached their place, I didn't know what I would say. I wasn't sure how often they talked to their mom, but I knew I didn't want to hide anything from them. When they saw me, they ran up and hugged me as I walked through the door. My smile was so broad it could be seen from space. I missed them both so much. "Daddy! Daddy!" they shouted, laughing like they were still little kids. They led me into the house, and I laid out the lunch I had brought. We sat and ate while they told me about their lives and schoolwork. I was so proud of my 2 girls. Isabella had been studying pharmacology for 2 years, and Olivia was studying nursing, 2 professions for loving and caring people. I saw Jessica in them and talked about our new family, promising we would all meet soon. When we finished lunch, I took a sip of coffee and wondered if they knew something was up. "What is it, Daddy? Spill it," Isabella said. "Well, you know your mom cheated on me, right?" I said. They looked at each other, then back at me, nodding in unison. "Well, I've had enough. And I've decided to leave her," I muttered, to everyone's smiles. "Good," Olivia said. "About time, Daddy," Isabella added. "You're not mad or anything, girls?" I asked timidly. "No, Daddy. For as long as I can remember, she's been a __ to you," Isabella growled. I thought about reprimanding her for disrespecting her mother, but decided against it. In fact, I was glad Isabella spoke up. I also felt ashamed because they had obviously seen this growing up. I hoped they wouldn't follow in their mother's footsteps when it came to relationships. I hoped I hadn't hurt them by being weak and pathetic. I also hoped they respected me. "What are you going to do, Daddy?" Olivia asked. I told them about my new job and that I would be moving closer to them. They were thrilled, but also surprised that I had decided to move away from their cheating mother and had already made plans. For that, I received 2 strong and loving hugs. I told them I would do everything to protect my financial future without going into too much detail. When I got up to leave, they said they would support me no matter what. Although they loved their mother, she came second to me and always had. I left their apartment full of happiness and was ready for the next phase of my plan. Ryan and Lily met a few years after he left university. They are 2 of the nicest people I know, and tonight I would be counting on their favor. I was greeted warmly as usual, but my mind was spinning about what I would be asking of them. They both knew I was out of my depth and wanted to know right away what was going on. I told them everything that had happened and the first part of my plan. They were more surprised by my resolve than by Laura's infidelity, which they saw as fairly common. "So why did you dump her now, Michael?" Lily asked, handing me a cup of tea. I declined something stronger since I had to drive home. I always thought she was cheating on me, but I couldn't prove it. Now that she admitted it, everything made sense. I also discovered something that made me say I'd had enough, I explained. I told them about meeting my cousins and that my mom kicked my dad out of the house, with my sister siding with her. My father was just like me, or rather, I was just like him. But this time, my girls were on my side. "So it was this discovery that prompted you to finally stand up for yourself?" Ryan asked, worry etched on his face. "No, I was taken to my father's grave. I was hesitant at first, but I managed to lay flowers and say a few words. Then I saw the engraving on the stone, which shocked me. That's when I realized I had to leave," I explained. "What was that, Michael?" they asked in unison. "There was a rose on it, and below it was the inscription in memory of him. It had his birth date and the age at which he died." There was silence before I spoke again. "He died at 44, the same age I am now." Ryan and Lily recoiled slightly at this news, and I knew they understood. There were times when I could have reached for a shot glass like he did, or driven myself to suicide like my grandmother thought he was doing. I had a choice: be like him or fight back. I declared, I made up my mind that I wasn't going to destroy myself anymore, trying to be the perfect husband while being mocked and belittled. Admitting to my friends how low I had been feeling was tougher than I thought, and I felt weaker than I had in weeks. Ryan's question caught me off guard. "What do you need from us, Michael?" Ryan asked. "Please say no if it's too much, but I have a plan to protect myself and take that bitch down," Lily interrupted, showing her tough side. I smiled and nodded, appreciating her determination. Back in 2008, when I suspected Laura of having an affair, I had secretly opened a separate savings account, stashing all my bonuses and spare cash in it. Luckily, our mortgage had to be taken out in my name only since Laura didn't have a real employment history. My savings, with interest, now total £60,800. I still owe £122,000 on my mortgage, but the house next door sold for over $500,000. "Ryan, I need your help to get a short-term loan for the remaining £60,000 so I can pay off the mortgage before I divorce her," I explained. "Why bother? She can still claim half," Lily pointed out. "Unless you count the £60,000 in savings I'm keeping, she'll fight for half of everything." "But that's where you come in," I said, pausing. "I want you to set up a new company." "You mean register a new company?" Ryan interrupted. "Exactly. I want to transfer ownership of my house to this new company. That way, she can't touch it. Once I pay off the mortgage, all I need to do is go to the land registry and transfer the paperwork to your company," I elaborated. Ryan and Lily exchanged skeptical looks. "Will that really work, Michael? If you divorce her, she'll get a lawyer and fight for everything," Ryan said. "She doesn't have the money for it, and I doubt her parents will pay such a huge bill knowing their daughter's a cheating bitch. Plus, I'm planning to use her low opinion of me to my advantage," I replied. "How?" Ryan asked. "She thinks I'm a coward who will never leave her. I won't file for divorce until I sell the house. The property becomes cash, and by the time she realizes I'm divorcing her, we'll have moved the money into different accounts," I explained. Ryan smiled, impressed. "I never knew you had it in you, Michael." "So, you'll help me?" I asked. "Absolutely. I'll get started on it. But you know a good lawyer will try to trace the money, right?" he warned. "Yes, but it will take time, and she can't afford a big legal bill," I replied. After another hour of discussing details, I headed home, feeling all the pieces falling into place. On the way, I decided I wouldn't even file for divorce right away. I doubted I'd meet anyone else or remarry, and this would buy me more time. Laura wouldn't notice my absence for at least a month. The thought made me chuckle. By next week, I'd be gone. When I got home, it was nearly 2 a.m. Laura was sound asleep, showing no remorse for her actions. I decided to sleep in the spare room. Thursday morning, I was up and out of the house before Laura woke. I drafted my resignation letter in the morning and called Ryan around lunchtime. "I've got good news, bad news, and more good news," he said. "Let's hear it," I replied, laughing. "The good news is the company is registered. It only takes an hour at the company house. The bad news is to get a loan for the amount you need, you'll need significant collateral, like a house, which won't work for you." I felt frustration building when Ryan continued. "Michael, you trust me, and I trust you. Lily and I have been thinking about this, and I'll transfer £60,000 into your account right now. Just pay me back when you can, okay?" I was stunned and immensely grateful. "This is too much, Ryan. You've done enough already." "Just take the money and do what you need to do," he insisted. "You have no idea how much this helps me. I owe you big time," I said. "Just walk away from that disrespectful, money-grabbing scammer and be happy. That's all we care about," he replied. I gave him my details and ended the call. My next call was to the bank to arrange a meeting. After work, or rather the lack of it, I drove to the local Land Rover dealership. I knew the owner, Paul Scott, from when I bought Laura's Range Rover Sport 10 months ago. I was still paying for it, but I had an idea to get some extra cash. "Hello, Mr. Harris. Have you decided on a new car?" Paul greeted me at the entrance. "No, Paul. I need to discuss selling my wife's car and paying off my debt," I said, trying to appear more pleased than I felt. "I hope everything's all right," he said, concerned. "It's fine. You've met her. You know how demanding she is. Now she wants a Mercedes 4x4, I said. "I don't want to speak ill, but she did seem rather demanding," he admitted. We agreed that he would take back the Range Rover and cancel our payment plan. I promised to return to upgrade my car, and he knew he could offset Laura's car's value by selling it as practically new. I apologized for the inconvenience, but the prospect of selling me an expensive new Range Rover more than made up for it. On my way out, I picked up a 2016 brochure, not for myself, but for Laura. When I got home, Laura was in the living room drinking coffee and looking a bit pale. I took off my jacket and threw my bag on the floor. "Everything okay, love?" I asked through clenched teeth. "Yeah, just feeling a bit tired," she said, sipping her coffee. She held out her arms as if wanting a hug to feel better. I ignored her and went to my bag, pulling out the brochure. "I know what will make you feel better," I said. I walked over and sat on the coffee table across from her. She looked puzzled, glancing at the empty seat beside her and then back at me. "What's that?" she asked, eyeing the pamphlet. "Your car is almost a year old. I was at the dealership today and saw their new model. It's amazing," I said, her eyes lighting up. "I want my wife to have the best, so I'm going to trade in your car and get you this one," I said, pointing to the new 2017 model in the brochure. "Oh, I love that," she said, ignoring the plan. "You always know how to make me feel better, don't you, Michael? The only problem is, they already have a buyer for your car, so I need to get it there by Friday afternoon. I'll finish work early and drive it to the dealership. You can use mine this weekend to visit your loved ones." Her face showed shock and confusion. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing, Michael. I just thought you were still mad about our arrangement," she said. "It wasn't our arrangement, Laura. It was yours. I didn't have a say in it, but I guess I don't really have a choice, do I?" I replied, hoping for a reaction. She only nodded, as if she had finally put me in my place, and I admitted defeat. "I love you, Michael." As I turned to look at her, I saw a sincere expression of concern. Without responding, I walked away to the kitchen. The phone rang, so I stepped outside to the garden to answer it. Ryan confirmed that the money had been transferred, and I was ready to move forward. The next day, I wasted no time and headed to the bank, meeting with a mortgage loan officer. She looked to be around my age but wasn't wearing a wedding ring, which briefly made me think about life after Laura. I quickly pushed the thought aside. An hour later, I had paid off the mortgage and closed all my remaining accounts. I went through a few houses and opened a new account at another bank. It felt satisfying to know I was taking control, though the thought of Laura hiring a lawyer still loomed over me. Back at the office, I ignored Chloe as she tried to speak to me. I sat down with a cup of coffee, contemplating the next steps of my plan. I contacted the land registry and completed the online application form. With all the details of Ryan and Lily's new company, I submitted the application and received a confirmation email stating it would take 5 days to process. Once it was done, I would hand the paperwork over to Ryan, who would register the property under his company. I spent some time browsing the internet for furniture and details on canceling utilities in the house, while setting up new accounts for my apartment in Hamilton. There was just one more thing I had been dreading. I knocked on Tom's door. Chloe was with him, of course. That sleazy old man always fiddled with her on Fridays, and I seemed to be interrupting their little session. She left us alone. "What can I do for you, Michael?" he asked, escorting Chloe out with a glance. I placed my resignation letter on his desk. He looked at me with a puzzled grin. "What's this?" he asked. "I'm resigning," I replied. "I think it's best if I leave immediately, given our family situation. I doubt you'll want me around for much longer." He looked stunned. "I'd appreciate it if you could have my P45 ready by Monday, and please don't tell anyone about it. My wife doesn't know yet," I added firmly. "You can't just leave. We need you," he stammered. "Not as much as you need your nephew. I'll be here Monday to collect my things," I said. I pretended to drop a pen, and bending over, pulled a voice recorder from my sock. I attached a pin to it, and as I stood up, pressed the record button and slid it under the seat. "If that's all, Tom, I have other matters to attend to," I said. "Okay, Michael, but don't come crawling back when you're broke. Your money is the only thing keeping that cheating wife with you. Do you realize that?" He sneered. "Of course, Tom. I wish my wife was as faithful as yours," I replied with a smile. Knowing that comment hit him hard, I turned and walked out of his office. An hour later, I drove home, picked up Laura's car and magazine, and headed to the dealership to drop off her car. Paul Scott offered to drive me home, and I gratefully accepted. When I arrived home that evening, Laura was at the kitchen table with red, puffy eyes from crying. "What's going on?" I asked with feigned concern. "We need to talk, Michael," she said, gesturing for me to sit. A wave of anxiety washed over me. "What is it?" I asked. "I went to the doctor today and was diagnosed with—" She hesitated, her voice trembling. Thoughts raced through my mind about what kind of man I would be to leave a seriously ill woman. "Just tell me, Laura. What is it?" I pressed. "I have gonorrhea," she finally blurted out, bursting into tears. I laughed, loud and hard, and she stared at me in disbelief. "It's not funny. I'm so embarrassed," she cried. I turned to her, and she looked utterly confused. This was supposed to be humiliating for her. "Well, I know I don't have it because I haven't touched you in over a month, and when I found out about your escapades, I used protection," I said, barely hiding my satisfaction. "So, you're fine? Is that normal?" she asked quietly. "Just take your medication. Soon you'll be back on your feet, or should I say back on your back," I said sarcastically. "If looks could kill, I'd be dead." "Find out who gave it to you and tell them to see the doctor before it spreads further," I added, getting up and leaving her sobbing at the table. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months, though in the spare room to avoid any risks. Saturday morning, I felt refreshed. A good night's sleep had done wonders. I went to the bedroom and woke Laura. "I'm going to see the girls. I'll give them your best wishes. Get some rest, okay?" I said, with as much false warmth as I could muster. She smiled weakly and asked for a hug. I obliged, but it was half-hearted. As she released her grip, she seemed to sense something was wrong. "You think I'm disgusting, don't you?" she asked tearfully. I said nothing, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "I just want you to get better, that's all." "Oh, Michael, I love you so much. I think I've really messed up." I told Allison about my problem, and she was horrified. At first, I felt a twinge of pity for her, but it quickly vanished. I realized I had lost all love for the woman I had been married to for 21 years. Could my feelings really have changed so quickly? Apparently so, because I was ready for it, and her predicament couldn't stop me. Without another word, I left the room, got into my car, and drove away, feeling strangely happy. Later that morning, I sat with my daughters and told them everything that had happened. They were astonished and looked at me with newfound respect. When I mentioned Laura's trip to the doctor, they found it hilarious. I shouldn't have laughed, but I couldn't help it. It made me think the girls might dislike her as much as I did. "What's she going to do now, Daddy?" Olivia asked. "She'll have to move in with her grandparents or convince one of her lovers to take her in. I suspect those guys were only interested in having an affair with a married woman and bragging about it. I doubt they'd want a real relationship with her. What do you think?" I asked. They both just shook their heads. That evening, I stayed with Ryan and Lily, who were hosting a dinner party with many friends and co-workers. Among the guests were several single women my age, and I felt confident enough to start a conversation with them. The alcohol helped me approach a woman named Grace who caught my eye. She was a divorced friend of Lily's, and as the drinks flowed, she even managed to get me to dance. It was a fun night and exactly what I needed. A night where I wasn't thinking about Laura, the end of my marriage, or my plans to leave her. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. When I got home late Sunday morning, I found Laura bustling around the house doing chores. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over and hugged me. I just patted her back lightly. "Where were you last night, Michael? I thought you were coming home," she asked. "Ryan and Lily had a dinner party and I had too much to drink, so I slept on their couch," I replied nonchalantly. "That's not like you. Did you have fun?" she asked, giving me a wary look. I had to be careful not to reveal too much. I pulled out my phone and showed her some pictures from the party. Her face soon turned red. "Who is that woman?" she asked angrily. "Oh, this is Grace. She's Lily's friend. She made me dance. It was a lot of fun," I said casually. I looked up from the phone and saw Laura glaring at me. The irony of her anger didn't escape me. She was furious about me dancing with someone, while she had been sleeping with other men every week. "I want to go with you next time. I haven't seen the guys in a while," she said, her color returning to normal. I made my way to the kitchen and put the kettle on. Laura followed me. "Did you feel okay without the car?" I asked, trying to fill the silence with small talk. "I'm fine. When is my new car coming?" she inquired. "They said it would be delivered on Wednesday," I replied. She looked somewhat concerned, but I added, "If you want to pick it up yourself, you can go Monday afternoon." "I have things to do on Monday, getting my hair done and shopping with my sister," she said, obviously not too worried about the missing car. "I can drop you off in town to meet your sister, then you can have her drive you to the dealership. You can come back in your new Range Rover," I suggested with an excited grin. She smiled and came toward me with open arms. I turned back to the kettle, pretending not to notice. The rest of the day, Laura was by my side, and I felt awkward. She kept trying to kiss or hug me, and I kept making excuses to leave. I think she realized what it was about because when I went to bed, she was crying again. "Good night, Laura. Will you sleep with me tonight, Michael? I want to snuggle up and hear you tell me everything's going to be okay." "Not until you get permission from the doctor, Laura. I'm sorry, but you made your own bed," I said stiffly. "Well, when I get better, I'm sure I can find a man who wants to get into bed with me. I have a lot of lost time to make up for," she snapped bitterly. I laughed to myself. It took longer than I expected, but there she was. The bitch was back. All the regrets of Friday night were gone. For the last 21 years, I would have fallen for her bullshit. But this time, I ignored her tears and headed for the spare room. It was my last night in the house, and she would be alone in the bedroom. Her words had removed any doubt I might have had. I looked at the picture of her with my sisters and felt nothing but hatred. She was sweet when she wanted something, and a bitch when she couldn't have it. Monday morning, I woke up early. Laura woke up early too, as she had an appointment with her hairdresser at 8:30. I drove her into town as planned. "Don't forget to take a cab to the dealership around 2 in the afternoon. They're waiting for you," I said, ignoring her attempts to kiss me. As I drove off, I felt a sense of finality. This might be the last time I would see her, and I intended to make it happen. On the way, I called the cell phone company and canceled both of our contracts, pulling over to pay the fine with my card. They informed me the phones would be working until 5 p.m. perfect. I then went to the office to pick up my P45. As I entered the factory, the atmosphere was solemn. News of my departure must have spread. Walking down the hallway toward my office, I passed the coffee machine where the usual suspects had gathered. I wasn't sure if Chris and Daniel knew they both had slept with my wife, but they smirked and exchanged jokes. "Good morning, guys," I said cheerfully. "Good morning, Michael. How's the wife?" They sneered to the usual laughter. "Not very much, I'm afraid." "One of you assholes swiped her," I replied, walking away. Their jaws dropped, and I heard Chris yell something to Daniel before I headed up the stairs. Chloe saw me coming and half smiled, lowering her head. Maybe now I was getting some respect. Tom was at the door before I could knock. "I have what you need, so take it and get out," he snapped. Maybe the respect was just in my imagination. I entered his office and sat down, discreetly retrieving the recorder I had placed earlier. "So, do you have another job lined up, Michael?" he asked sharply. "No," I said. A wide smile appeared on his face, probably thinking I'd come crawling back soon. "So, I get my last month's paycheck and my year-end bonus?" I asked. He burst into laughter just as Chloe walked in with my P45. "What's so funny?" she asked. "Michael just asked for his bonus and salary." "That's hilarious," Tom said, still laughing. Chloe joined in and I thought, why not? I laughed too, making them stop and look at me like I was crazy. "Why are you laughing, Michael?" Chloe asked. "I don't know, Chloe. Why do you let that old bastard have sex with you every week?" I said, laughing louder. They froze, Chloe's eyes widening and Tom turning red with anger. "I'm sure your parents are proud of their whore daughter," I added. Chloe threw my papers on the floor and ran out, crying. "You bastard," Tom growled. "Get out of my office and my company before I have the guys drag you out by your ears." I laughed, walking out and heading to my office to pack the last of my things. I was still chuckling when I pulled up in front of my house. I got out, lowered the back seats, and opened the trunk. Walking around the house, I decided what to take with me. I had several Romero BRD works, so I took them down, wrapped them in plastic from the garage, and packed them in the car. I continued packing, finally going upstairs to empty out my closet. I pulled all my documents from the safe, including the girls' birth certificates and our marriage license. I found an attic ladder and climbed up to retrieve my old stuff, diplomas and family photos. I went to the jewelry box and took all the jewelry I had bought Laura over the years. They must have cost over 10,000 pounds. I also took all the handbags, shoes, and expensive coats I had bought her. The entire closet was filled with items I had paid for, so I took everything. I've always been meticulous, so I had receipts for almost everything. This would serve me well when I came to sell it all. When I finished packing, I realized I would need a TV. I decided to take the TV along with my movie collection and Blu-ray player. By this time, my car was overstuffed, so I had to leave behind some of Laura's clothes and a few things I didn't really need, including some of my old clothes. A new me required a new wardrobe, and I knew the girls would love to help with that. I found the best pictures of me and the girls and put them in the car. There was no hurry. Laura wouldn't be back until after 2 p.m. I made myself a cup of tea and took 5 minutes to relax. You have to have a cup of tea. It's practically a British law. I picked up the phone, called the telecom company, and canceled the satellite TV, phone, and internet services. Next, I called British Gas and Southern Water to cancel the utilities. It would take a few days, but I didn't care. Back in the bedroom, I noticed something that gave me a chilling idea. At the top of the closet, in a dusty old box, was Laura's wedding dress. She loved it, probably more than she loved me. I took it out and found our wedding album among the photos on the bed. Grabbing the duvet cover, I gathered all my things and headed out to the garden. In the middle of the garden, I made a pile with Laura's clothes and other items I couldn't sell. I left only her underwear, as I didn't want anything to get contaminated. I went to my car and locked the doors. It was only 1:45 p.m., so I called James Thompson and told him I could give my P45 later that evening and start the night shift. He was thrilled, and I assured him I was already working on plans to attract new customers and improve the hydraulic pumps, making us super competitive in the marketplace. Sensing my enthusiasm, I hoped I had made his day. At 2 p.m., I was waiting for Laura's call. Finding some paint thinner in the garage, I poured it on her wedding dress. Just as I was about to light it, the phone rang. "Hi," I said calmly. "What's going on, Michael?" Laura yelled into the phone. "What do you mean, Laura?" I asked sarcastically. "Don't play dumb, Michael," she continued. "Calm down, Laura. What's going on?" I asked, trying to sound concerned. There was silence, and I could hear her heavy breathing and her sister's voice in the background. "I was told you didn't bring me a new car. You sold mine." "Oh yes, did I forget to tell you that?" I replied. What are you talking about, Michael? What's going on? She started to panic. From now on, if you need a car, you can pay for it yourself, I said, trying to stay as calm as possible. My heart was pounding. I don't understand, Michael, she said meekly, sounding confused. You heard me perfectly well, Laura. If you want it, you can buy it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to clean up the kitchen, I said, trying to sound dismissive. What? Is this some kind of sick joke? She shouted. We'll talk about it when I get home, Michael. I'm not satisfied with being coddled, she screamed. I stayed silent. I heard her pacing and slamming a door, realizing she was on her way home with her sister. Michael, 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 she kept repeating. Yes? I replied almost too calmly. You said you were in our kitchen, she asked, suddenly realizing what I had said. Yes, why? I asked. Why aren't you at work? She asked, her voice full of panic and confusion. I didn't respond. Instead, I hung up the phone as she continued to call out my name. I walked outside, struck a match, and lit the fire. Our past went up in flames as I walked away. I pulled the marriage certificate out of my pocket, ripped it to shreds, and left it on the kitchen table along with the only picture of us vacationing at Disneyland. I wondered if she thought of those times as fondly as I did. I got in the car and drove away. At the end of the street, I saw Laura and Melissa pull up to the house. Neither of them looked up. They just ran inside. I turned off my phone, smiled, and drove away. As I drove towards my new home, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I knew this wasn't the last time I'd see Laura. Once my plan was fully in motion, she would do anything to hunt me down and make me pay. That was the kind of person she was. I also knew she'd try to involve the girls, and I didn't want them burdened with our problems, especially since they needed to focus on their studies. I arrived in Hamilton by 4 p.m. and decided to visit the local phone store to get a new cell phone contract. I also managed to catch the administration team at work processing my P45 and met Freya, my new receptionist. She was young, but maintained a very professional demeanor, a complete contrast to Chloe. Back at my new empty apartment, I had water and electricity, so I found the kettle I brought from home and made a cup of tea. I moved my things in and ordered a pizza. Picking up my old cell phone, I noticed the connection was broken. I smiled, knowing Laura was now without her phone too, which should give the girls some respite before I could talk to them. I found my sleeping bag, spread it out in the living room, and waited for dinner. I was supposed to have some furniture delivered over the weekend, but for now, I was glad to be away from Laura. I turned on my laptop and listened to the voice recordings I had made in Tom Green's office, which provided incriminating evidence of his infidelity with Chloe. I copied the recordings onto 2 flash drives and labeled them with the addresses of Margaret Green, Tom's wife, and Peter Lewis, Chloe's boyfriend. I planned to send them off tomorrow before work. Finally, I decided to call my daughter Isabella to update her and instruct her not to tell their mother where I was. To my surprise, she admitted she hadn't even talked to her mother yet, likely because Laura didn't have a phone. Within a week, I had furnished my apartment. Without wasting any time, I contacted Green Engineering's clients and convinced them to switch to Hamilton. Seeing what we offered, they quickly jumped ship. Some people stayed with Tom, but most hated him and had tolerated him only because of the superior products we provided. I knew Tom wouldn't immediately understand why his business was losing customers, but I didn't care. I also knew that with the utilities shut off at my old house, Laura would realize I wasn't coming back. Unable to afford the bills, she would soon face the reality of my departure. Ryan started the process of selling the house, and Lily was more than happy to handle the task. By the end of the week, for sale signs were up. It was then that Olivia contacted me, telling me that Laura had moved into her parents' house, and they were not happy about it. Laura's parents were furious about their little princess going rogue. Laura, of course, was out for my blood and livid at what I had done to her. Strangely, I found great satisfaction in it, but I knew it wasn't over yet. By the weekend, I was invited to another dinner party at Ryan and Lily's house. I learned that Grace would be there and that she had asked Lily about me. Grace had gotten divorced a few years ago and had been single ever since. Her husband had left her a year before the divorce, but she managed to get the house and full custody of their children, along with financial support. Lily had told her about my situation, and she had been eager to meet me. That's why they planned this dinner party. Grace was 2 years younger than me, and had 2 older teenage children. I felt like I was being set up but decided it couldn't hurt. The dinner was a success, and for the first time since I thought about leaving Laura, I felt completely relaxed. Grace understood what I was going through and didn't push me or make it obvious that she liked me. We got drunk, danced together, and at the end of the night, we exchanged numbers. She told me to call if I needed someone to talk to, and I thanked her. I slept in the spare room at Ryan's house, but fighting off the hangover was getting harder, and the coffee wasn't helping. Sunday morning brought good news. Just a week after putting the house up for sale, I received 2 serious offers, one of which I immediately accepted for £550,000. I knew it could take some time for the deal to finalize, but I agreed to the money as soon as it was ready. I plan to open an ISA in the girls' names and ask Ryan to distribute the remaining amount between various investment funds. I would also return the money I owed him and keep some cash in a home safe for myself. I still felt the need to protect myself. Another week went by, and I was happy to hear from Ryan that the sale could be finalized quickly. I contacted a moving company and instructed them to vacate my old house. The girls called their mother to ask if she needed anything, which only made her angrier and more threatening. I promised the girls that it would be over soon. On Tuesday morning, I was talking to one of our new customers who had been meeting with Tom Green about a possible supply contract extension. He told Tom that he was moving to Hamilton Engineering, and Tom was not surprised. He learned that Green Engineering had to cut 50% of their staff due to job losses. He also informed me that Mrs. Green was divorcing Tom due to his adultery. I had absolutely no sympathy and was mentally counting my commission checks as we talked. I had no idea what had happened to Chloe and her boyfriend, but I knew he got my gift if Mrs. Green got hers. Even if she didn't, I was sure she understood why Mrs. Green was divorcing her husband. I wondered what her friends and family thought about her cheating with an old man. To reward me for my hard work, I was given a brand new Land Rover Discovery HSE. I had been thinking of treating myself, but James and the bosses were so pleased with my performance and the company's progress that they gave me the car and a substantial commission. It was over £30,000. I was admiring my new car from my office window when a familiar Ford Focus pulled into the parking lot. I froze, recognizing it as Linda's car, Laura's mom. I sat back in my chair and waited for the inevitable call. The witch had finally found me. The phone rang in my office and I picked it up. "Mr. Harris, there's a woman in the waiting room who claims to be your wife," said Freya, my secretary. "Tell her I have a meeting and I'll be down in an hour," I replied. 3 hours later, I looked out the window and she was still sitting there. I exhaled loudly and decided to leave for the night. If she saw me, I'd deal with it, and if not, I'd just drive past. She didn't know which car to watch for. I walked out the side door and headed to my car. Just as I was getting in, I heard tires screeching. Before I knew it, she had pulled up and blocked my way. Laura stormed over to me with a face like thunder. She looked terrible. Her clothes were clearly her sister's old ones, and her hair looked like it hadn't been brushed in weeks. "You bastard!" she screamed, hurling a slap in my direction but missing. "I hate you! I hate you!" "Yeah, I hate you too, Laura. Now say what you want to say and then get out of my life," I said, trying to stay calm. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she looked at me. "You ruined my life, you bastard," she whispered pitifully. I stayed silent and kept listening. "You destroyed all my belongings, my wedding dress, my clothes. And then you canceled everything and forced me to move in with Mom and Dad," she continued, waiting for me to respond. "Was that all, Laura?" I asked. "Don't you have anything to say for yourself?" she shouted. I thought for a second before inviting her into my car. She was taken aback, but I didn't want to be a public spectacle anymore. Once we were seated inside, I waited for her to continue. When I saw her, it was clear she had aged significantly, looking tired and worn out. The stress and her health issues seemed to have taken a heavy toll on her. "Please come home, Michael. Let's forget everything and move on." "I forgive you," she said. I couldn't believe my ears. "What did you say? Did you just say you forgive me?" I asked, bewildered. "Yes, Michael. I forgive you for destroying my life and my things," she replied. "Are you out of your mind, Laura?" I shot back, incredulous. She just stared at me like I was the crazy one. "You cheated on me openly and disrespected me after everything I did for you, and now you have the audacity to say you forgive me." "But I thought," she tried to explain. No, Laura, you're only thinking of yourself. I'll never be with you again. Go back to one of your lovers, I responded coldly. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair, and it dawned on me that once she was single, they didn't want her anymore. They accused me of giving them an STD and said I was just having a bit of fun. They told me they would never want me as a girlfriend because I'm a cheating bitch, she confessed. For a moment, I almost felt pity, but she had brought this on herself. Well, Laura, that was obvious. Go find someone else. My friends started treating me differently. Now we've broken up, and their husbands are questioning their loyalty, so I've been cast aside. They say I could be a bad influence, she continued. The word separation echoed in my mind, reminding me that I was still connected to her, and it made me sad. My parents are disgusted, and everyone in town knows about my STD, thanks to my so-called friends and lovers. Now some factory workers have lost their jobs, and that's being pinned on me too. The reality was, she was partly responsible for all the misfortune that had befallen her, but I still felt a twinge of sympathy. She had messed up and was now paying the price. But what a hefty price it was. She had a wonderful life and destroyed it with her greed and disrespect. Still, I knew I had to move forward. I have nothing left, Michael. I need you and want you back in my life. I have no money, no job. When will I get my share of the house? She begged. You've never once told me you love me. You just need me, Laura, and I don't need you. As for the house, I didn't pay the mortgage and it's gone, I lied. Her eyes widened in shock, her jaw dropping. At least I knew how this visit would end. I want a divorce, I stated firmly. No, please, Michael. Of course I love you. Over 20 years together, and I made a little mistake. And you're throwing me out? She screamed. A very big, unforgivable mistake, Laura, and I'm never coming back to you, I said, resolute. Please, Michael, she pleaded, her screams echoing through the car. I need a clean break. If you agree, I'll give you 30,000 pounds in cash, I offered. Her face shifted, tears replaced by a new determination. No, she yelled. I'll fight you in court for everything. There's no way you lost the house. You're too smart for that. Damn, she was right, I thought. All right, Laura, here's the deal. You're not getting a penny from me. She leaned closer, determined. I'll fight you for everything and more, Michael, she threatened. You have no money, Laura. I'll move my assets so that you'll spend a fortune trying to find them. By the time your lawyer catches up, your bills will negate any benefit. Take the money I'm offering or I'll give it away. Your choice, I said, eyes locked on hers. You bastard. I loved you, bore you children, and this is how you repay me? She shouted. Thanks to me, our girls will go far. They won't be liars and cheats like their mother. They'll be selfless, not selfish. So take the money and get out of my life, I replied, my anger rising. She looked at me like I was a stranger. All right, she hissed. I'll take the money and agree to the divorce. Okay, I'll set it up, I responded. With those words, she got out of my car and slammed the door shut. A few seconds later, she sped out of the parking lot. The next day, I filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery, and a week later, I arranged to meet Laura at the girl's apartment. The sale of my house went through, but I held off on finalizing anything until the papers were signed. We tried to be polite in front of the girls, but it was strained. I handed Laura the money, and she signed the papers. I kissed the girls goodbye and wished Laura good luck. As I was about to leave, she burst into tears again, but I had a feeling it was for the girls' benefit. Isabella and Olivia gave me knowing looks. They understood. I'll see you next weekend, Dad, Olivia said as I headed for the door. I went back into the room. Laura was still sobbing and no one paid her any attention. I suddenly remembered what Olivia had mentioned. Oh yeah, the Coldplay concert. Everyone's looking forward to it. Are we meeting you in London or driving together? Asked Isabella. I'll talk to Grace and let you know during the week, I said one last time before I left. On my way out, I heard Laura yelling something, but I chose to ignore it and walked away.